the NFL to college pipeline. Wasn't that long ago where all the NFL folks were like, oh my gosh, everyone hates college football. Everyone's leaving. There's a mass exodus of all the talent. I mean, it was literally this time last year that was happening when Jeff Hafley like jumped to restart the clock and left BC to work for the Packers. Now there's been like huge numbers going the other direction. You mentioned it off the top, right? Of the like, college football is becoming more professionalized. There are more roles that look like roles in the NFL. It's still different, still entirely different product and different system, but it's not just Bill Belichick. I mean, we're seeing, we've seen different coordinators, a lot of defensive coordinator hires from the NFL, including your Buckeyes, who just brought Matt Patricia in as their defensive coordinator. But we saw Andrew Luck take a GM role at Stanford, Ron Rivera take a GM-ish role at Cal. There are a lot of big NFL names who want to get into college football right now. And I'm just curious about why you think that's happening. Why was there so much? Did Bill Belichick doing it open up some eyes to opportunities that could be there? Do people just really want to help their alma mater? Like, is there just like an altruistic piece of this of like, hey, I'm at the point in my life where I can, make a decision like this and go spend some time helping Stanford or Cal?
I think there's a little bit of that, right? Like, I think all of us who, there's that attraction. Like, you love your alma mater, I love my alma mater, right? Like, if the right opportunity opens up for some of these people, I think they're like 100% I would do it. I also think this is a really exciting time for some of these people to get into college football and to do a role that maybe hasn't been done and to be on the cutting edge of maybe changing the way that the sport looks and how people manage it. I think that's a part of their motivation as well. When I look at some of the coaches, though, I think some of these coaches had honest conversations with themselves and they were like, I ain't getting the looks in the NFL right now. Like, there's the job that I want isn't there. And I think that in college football, they would respect my knowledge. They would respect what I could bring to the table. And this is an opportunity for me to get back into coaching. I look at Bill Belichick, and he had one interview with the Falcons last year, and I think that reset him where it's like, man, maybe my stock wasn't as high as I thought it would be. And going to college football might not be a bad thing, especially if they're paying him $10 million a year. No idea what Matt Patricia is going to get paid, but after the way things happened with Detroit and then the time that he spent in Philly where he had to take over play calling and it didn't go very well, he's going to be making a lot of money at a place that wants him to be there right now. And if he does a great job with Ohio State's defense, which he's going to have plenty of talent, some of these guys haven't played very much, plenty of talent, who knows how hot his name might be in the next cycle or two in the NFL. And so I really do think these guys are looking at it maybe not as like such a step down in competition and like, the kids table. I think they're looking at it as a real opportunity to coach guys who are very good players, to make a ton of money doing it, and then to get back to what they ultimately wanted to do, which is coaching in general, but maybe coaching back in the NFL in a year or two.
Yeah, I would love for, again, this is what bothered me a year ago of these narratives from NFL folks that like, people want it out of college. It's too hard. It's too annoying. Was kind of like what you just said about this, like the kids table. Like, it's not even like the highest level of football. They're different sports. There's a ton of overlap, right? And a bunch of the best players go directly from one to the other. But like, there are great, great coaches. Like, no one thinks like Nick Saban's not a great coach because he did it in college. And so I would love some of this like back and forth to just kind of get rid of some of those stereotypes or narratives about these jobs. And there's always a lot of movement with assistants every single year. We just don't usually talk about it as much. But I think that's important. I also think back to something Jed Fish told me last spring when we were talking about his staff, which obviously also had a lot of NFL names and sons of offspring. And he had Steve Belichick coordinating his defense. And his thing was, hey, we studied all the best defenses in college football. They all were NFL defenses. Like, they were run by guys that had NFL experience. And I think that is absolutely clearly a trend line in where some of these hires are. I mean, we talked about Ohio State. I mean, Michigan did this last year, bringing in Wink Martindale. There's a lot of different places that are looking for that element, and they just think that is the way to run a defense in the modern era of college football. So I think that's an interesting piece as well. If you look at trend lines like that and then decide, hey, we want to get in on that.
No, I'm totally there with you. And to that point, like, I think players have kind of forced that as well. I think a lot of times, especially transfer players, they ask the question when they sit down with the coordinators, like, how does playing in your system translate to me going to the NFL? And one of the answers can be, well, you're going to put up a ton of stats, so you're going to look really good. Or the other answer can be, this is what they run in the league. And so if you come here, you're going to be running very similar concepts to what you see at the next level. And so I think it's kind of like this feedback loop of players want to play in those defenses, and coaches are now realizing some of the best defenses, because they've got great players, are those exact defenses. The other thing that I think is interesting when it comes to these guys getting into the college game, we asked the question about, like, will Bill Belichick recruit? And he has to, right? Like, that's a part of the allure here. I don't know if Matt Patricia is going to be recruiting, and some of these other guys, but with the size of these staffs and the recruiting departments that they don't have, he doesn't have to do a damn thing. He might have to go out and close a couple times, but he's not going to be on the jet the same amount of time.
Deion Sanders doesn't. Deion Sanders doesn't go anywhere.
I mean, that's the thing about it. Like, you look at the way that staffs are built right now, you have guys that are like legit recruiters, like recruiters on the staff. And then you got other guys who are like the mad scientist dude, and they all play their position. So I think this whole question about, like, well, is he a good recruiter? I don't think it's as big of a deal anymore because of how these staffs are built and developed. And also just the sheer size of these recruiting departments nowadays. You can just go get you a ball coach if you need one.
Agree. And also, like, they've changed the rules around who can actually do on-field instruction. Everything is loosened now. So you can have more guys that can do more things. Plus, you have financial relations. Like, you don't have to just sell them on you as a person. You can sell them on, this is what we run, this is how I coach you, and this is what you're paid. Like, it's just a different decision-making process now. Which again, I think is probably also enticing for some of these guys who want to come and do different things. It's more transactional. It's more like the NFL, because it's not, again, we're moving more towards contracts, but it's not quite the same yet, but it's just different. It's not, maybe you're not going to have to call 17-year-olds all the time. Maybe you only have to do it like a little bit, and that's tolerable.
I mean, I'll tell you this story. So Urban, after practice, he would have, like, I sold real estate at one point, and if you went into the office, there would be like dial time where you would get on the phone and you would cold call people. And Urban basically had that for his coaches. And he would make them log how many calls they made and what the context of the call was and how the conversation went. And I don't think in that world you get the Bill Belichicks and the Matt Patricias and some of these other NFL names that have a desire to coach college football. But they're not, it's just not the same anymore. Like, it is a very different world in terms of this sport that we're living in right now.
It is. And talent evaluation is totally different as well, with so much film and access to information.